Hello, 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 and welcome to the show. It's Wrestling with Entertainment, bringing you the latest exclusive breaking news, previewing and reviewing the latest shows from WWE, AEW, New Japan, and everything in between. I am your host, James J. As always, with me, Kaliko Yachts
You count down to where I can do this stuff from my pool. What's good, y'all?
and Scooter Dust.
Counting down to where I can do this from my igloo.
And it's a great day for wrestling because we are wrestling with
The Psychedelic Psychonaut. Counting down until I couldn't find a good one.
I love that.
Yeah. What is up, guys? It's
Christian
Chris
Rob.
Robinson here. Sorry, it's Chris Robinson here in case you guys couldn't tell, didn't know. Tripping balls on Instagram. Christ610 on Twitter, like KHRIST. And that's pretty much it. Wrestling at H2O this Sunday against Jimmy Lloyd. That's a Sean Henderson show.
Yes, Sean Henderson's
So that
Once
is my
Upon a Time
yes.
at the H2O Wrestling Center in Williamstown, New Jersey. See Christian battle Jimmy Lloyd along with the infamous lowlife Louis Azriel, as well as the only independent wrestler in the world with cerebral palsy, Gregory Iron.
Gregory Iron.
Going to be a great
That's
show.
right. Great
And
show.
what can you tell us about the wrestling scene where you're at right now, Christian?
So it's funny. I'm at a funny place where wrestling, in terms of, I'm gonna look at it let's look back into last year, right? I was on Dojo Wars, wrestling every weekend, doing, like making towns for at least the local shows that I could get on. And now I'm wrestling maybe once a month. So in terms of just looking at how things are now, it's just appreciating every single time that you even get to, wrestle. And like even last year, just wrestling all the time, you kind of get redundant and into the same, I guess, routine. Just knowing that you have to, next week I'm going to be here at the same exact time doing this, blah, blah, and this weekend I'm going to be going here. Well, now I don't want any of my, I want my last match to look like the match I had before or the match I'm going to have tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's definitely kept me more current in terms of I got to make sure every time I'm seen now is like bow, not just like, I need to do that.
Now, you say you only wrestle now once a month. What does that mean for you in terms of training? Are you getting in-ring training more or less? And if so, what is that schedule like?
Mm-hmm. So even at the beginning of quarantine, for the first couple months, there were really probably no rings.
Christian?
So where did I leave off at?
Well, let's just start from the beginning of how frequently are you getting in-ring training and
Okay.
cardio as compared to when you were doing it on the regular?
So even when I was doing it on the regular, you look back, I wasn't even going to training as much as I could have. I was still going to training a pretty decent amount. But even then, I don't think I was looking at the actual ring time I was doing as learning, if that makes any sense. I would
Mm-hmm.
kind of just be going out there, and I'd be like, I need to do this, blah, blah, I need to, And now, while I'm out there, it feels not like a straight up learning experience because this is a match, This is like this is as real as it gets in terms of like trying to go out there and perform like to a T and like and not be terrible, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like now, like I'm in my matches and I'm like, I feel a little bit more confident because in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, but I haven't been going to training as much as I would like to, and this and that. But you really do get better when you're really like performing, you know, like you can go and train, and you definitely should go and tune up on all your basics because I don't care who you are, you can go and tune up on your basics more, you know. But at some point, you're gonna need to know how to actually go out and perform it. So
You
Okay.
do you kind of feel like the pandemic kind of helped you in that sense to not be in that routine and kind of have those more interesting matches like you said?
yes, that is exactly because you know, like think about it. At like before, I guess what was it, March? Before March, I was wrestling every week, sometimes twice a week, and then probably on the weekends. And you're just grateful to even be wrestling, right? So not that you take it for granted, but you do because you're like, oh, I'm about to wrestle again, like in 2 days, or I'm about to wrestle again next week, or I'm about to wrestle again tomorrow. So if things don't go as smoothly as you wanted to, or you're just waiting for you, I guess what I'm trying to say now is that you can't really wait for things. You have to put forward the motion, like. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Can you briefly describe your very first day of training and what was going through your mind?
So you don't really talk about my tryout or just like my first day of training because
But
that
I think we could go into both of those. I think there's
both.
both interesting stories there. So, at
It
your
sounds like
discretion.
there's an interesting story though.
Yeah. So my first day ever going to like to try out because I've wanted to be a wrestler pretty much all my life, but I didn't really think it was like a plausible thing to just like because we're not even just talking about moves here, you know, we're talking about just straight up being like, you know, a performer basically. And I was like, you know, I know I'm like somewhat of a performer, but I don't know if I could be like a wrestler. But I was talking about it. I would only tell like my close friends, and my grandparents knew. That's who I live with now. It was my grandparents, and my grandmother one day out of the blue was like, "Oh, why don't you call up the school and just see what they say?" And I called up CZW, and DJ Hyde answers the phone,
Ooh.
and yeah, it's DJ Hyde, and I'm like, and he's like, "Hey, it's CZ, like all professional CZW Wrestling Academy DJ speaking," and I'm like, "Hey, you know, it's me," or he didn't know who I was, but hey, I'm Christian, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling him the deal, like I want to be a wrestler, and then he's like, "Oh, why don't you come by today?" And I was just like, "Huh," you know, and you know me, just put things in perspective for you. I graduated high school 3 months before that. I'm really not doing anything in my life, just skating. Like, to be honest, just skating and you know just chilling. And then out of the blue, like my grandmother's like, "All right, call the school up." And then I do, and then my grandmother's like, "Wait, they actually want you to come today?" And then she's a little reluctant to take me, and but they do, and we get up there, and the first person I see is DJ Hyde, Marie Manic, Layla Hirsch, some pretty, you know,
Very
Yeah.
pretty
intimidating.
big
And
names there.
Oh
Some pretty
yeah.
intimidating
Oh
presence
man.
there. Um, and then like I'm like taking all of this in, just like oh, like I'm actually like in front of a ring, like you know, like I'm like this is make or break right now, like like I don't know. It was a crazy experience. Just even from the perspective of me telling you that I didn't think I could actually do this, and I'm here. And then DJ's like, all right, man. Like, so, like, do you play any sports? You're an athlete? And I'm trying to tell him, like, yeah, I skate and all that, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, all right, well, we'll see if you can, we'll see if you can wrestle, basically. But I didn't do any actual wrestling. I didn't get in the ring. The first thing I did is DJ, he's like, yo, Layla, come here. And then Layla comes, and then she's like, all right, man, like, stretch out now. And if you guys don't know Layla Hirsch, she literally just made her AEW Dark debut, like, tonight. Like, she's a big star right now, but she's about to be an even bigger star. Just to put this in perspective too. But she's like, you might want to stretch out, blah, 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 because this is like, it's going to be intense. But, I stretch out and boom, tryout starts. Layla makes you do like 100 squats just right off the rip, just like right there, like 100 squats. And then she's like, oh, like that's cool. You did 100 squats, 100 more. And, did that. DJ was like, all right, man, I like whatever. You can do squats. He's like, do these bear crawls. He had me do bear crawls, like up and down the school until I couldn't, And then Nate Carter comes in. I don't know if you guys think Nate Carter is now, but he's training at the current CZW Academy. He's even to this day training. Nate Carter and Dave McCall, the rep as a collective, very beneficial to my career, and I'll speak of that later. But Nate Carter's right there. He's like, oh, I got this. He's like, do you want to be a wrestler? Blah? And he's like, all right, let me see like 100 push-ups. Do like, I do as many as I can. I don't think I just straight up did 100. And he makes you do 100 squats. I can do 100 squats again. And he's making me do wall planks, like wall sit-up planks. Like if you stand against the wall, just, squat, plank for as long as you can. And not like in terms of like, but like he's like, yo, like for your tryout, just to put this in perspective too, you don't want to do the task because you think, oh, I'm not gonna, you want to do it because you legitimately want to get into school. And I'll say this too, I'm not gonna lie. If this all was on the requirement sheets to be a pro wrestler, I probably wouldn't have even walked in. If I'm being honest, just because of what I thought I was capable of, I guess at that time. And then stepping out of that tryout, I was like, wow, I'm actually like, I'm not like jacked or anything, ripped, but I'm like in pretty good shape, man.
Yeah,
but honestly, the rest of that tryout, multiply 100 squats. I did over 1,000 squats that night.
Yeah.
And like 500 push-ups. I did a lot.
They really put you through the ringer that first day.
Yeah.
That's
I blame his grandma for that. She the one who got him there. I think that's the crazy, the awesome part of the story.
Yeah.
So was your grandma like really into wrestling to get you there, or she was just like, get your black ass out the house type deal?
Oh, so I think so. Definitely was like get out of the house because like it was at this moment, right? Let's think of all right. June, I graduate. I've already been talking about wrestling for probably maybe a year at this point because like that's when people were like, is this what you're gonna do? And I'm like, well, yeah, how'd you know? But I graduate and I'm just skating and my grandparents are just like, you might find what you want to do, and I'm trying to tell them it's this, but like again, like it's just a kid telling, your 7-year-old grandparents who their idea of wrestling, at least even if their modernist idea of wrestling is John Cena. That my grandmother hates John Cena. She can't stand John Cena, bro.
Oh, she a real G
she's
already.
Like every time he comes on the screen, all he does is talk and gets beat up. Like, I love John. John Cena follows me on Twitter.
Really?
John Cena was He does. He follows a lot of people on Twitter, but he follows me too. So
I find it very interesting that DJ Hyde actually put you through a tryout before you even got into training because
Yeah.
most schools in the Mid Atlantic, the NYWC included, under Mikey Whipwreck and Shane O'Neill, most of them will accept a payment and train you no matter what.
Yeah.
So
hmm And that's one thing that, because CCW gets a lot of hate, and some of it deservedly so. Um, but one thing we did make sure of was like, hey, you we can't accept like just anyone here training. I can't like say as in terms of now how wrestling is in general, because like it's like you said, like a lot of people just need money, so they're like, oh, I'll take your money and you can try to become a wrestler. Uh, yeah, that's my story.
You mentioned a couple times you've been skating a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Has skating, skateboarding obviously,
hmm
helped you in developing your style of wrestling? Or does
Yes, a
it's kind
hundred
of
percent.
okay?
Because I remember, this is a funny backstory too. When I first started wrestling, I was gonna abandon like just skateboarding altogether because of the seriousness of like I want to like become a wrestler, but whatever. And then like I also didn't think that like, so when I started training, or before I started wrestling, I could do like a nip up and like but I didn't know I could do like a bunch of flips. Like, being completely honest, like like this is all like straight up. I could do a nip up and a handspring with my hands. And I was obviously athletic. I knew I could be something, but before I knew I would be like an exciting kind of wrestler, I was like, CM Punk was like my inspiration. CM Punk was one of the dudes that I was like, oh, like I see myself in him. I wanted to be like straight up heel and just be like, oh, like the world's against me type of thing. But like when I started wrestling, I found the flips, and then people said I sounded like Ed from Good Burger when I was training. They said I looked like him, and they said I sounded like Kelso from that '70s show. Yeah, and I didn't like that at first because I was like, oh, they're calling me dumb, like it's exactly, I was like, they're calling me dumb, and I'm not even able to wrestle at the time. But when everything came together, and it was time to find a character, uh, like everyone's like, yo, you are just a skater kid, like and like I know you get mad at the Good Burger thing and all that, but like it's not, because you're like, you gotta understand that's just what people, when they see and they hear you and they see the hair and they see like the vibe, like it's just like they think of a guy that's like, oh, and then I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, because I liked Ed when I was a kid, but I wasn't like, oh, that's me, like I didn't see that, and then they brought that out in me. Or it was already there, but it made me realize it. And they're like, oh, like maybe I should capitalize on what people already see. Or,
Yeah,
And I remember this car ride, we were like listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, and the psychedelic Psychonaut came up in some fashion. I think it was Terrence McKenna's something about Terrence McKenna's brother. He was on the podcast. Terrence McKenna is a very experienced psychonaut. Like, go into that what you want to, but he said it. And Jordan, and this is Young Dumb and Broke, Jordan, Ellis, Pat, Griffin, Charlie Tiger, they were all like, oh, that's you. And I was like, what? And like, the psychedelic psychonaut. And I was like, oh, I guess. I didn't think it really sounded cool. But then it's, it kind of stuck. And here we are.
isn't that the best?
Dang, that sounds awesome. That's dope. That's dope. So since you like skateboarding, I know you got that Tony Hawk 1 and 2, man. I know you got to be on it, man.
What, the remastered?
The remastered one, yeah,
Dude, so
man.
you're gonna hate me. I didn't even get it on my PS4 right here. I haven't been playing,
What?
so I'm not even lying. When I'm at home, I play SmackDown. Here Comes the Pain.
Ooh,
Oh
that's a
yeah,
good
Because
one.
okay.
my creator wrestlers on here are superb. Like, I don't think anyone wants to, I don't think anyone wants to compare. But But yeah, I
Who's your
played the
go-to?
actual.
Who's your
My
main? Who's your
go-to
main?
call. So
Your
I
your
have a
main
really
your
good
main
AJ
player.
Styles. I have really good AJ Styles. I have really good Adam Cole. I have a really good. I have really good everyone in there, honestly. But I also have me. Like, there's a really good me in there too. So that's my go-to.
That's damn right.
But yeah.
And
But Tony Hawk Remastered. I forgot, dude. I was playing that at Young Dumb and Broke's house in New Jersey. That's Jordan Oliver and Ellis Taylor, Charlie Tiger, Griffin McCoy. Plug him again. But yeah, it's like they have the Philadelphia spot like in real life, like the Love Park deal, like
Oh
in
yeah.
Municipal.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, like, but I used to skate it when I was like younger and I wasn't too good. But it's cool to be able to see it in like exact, like, it's just like there, like that's how it
That's
actually is.
Yeah.
that's the
It's
same thing they
pretty
did with
weird.
San Diego too. Yeah, with Chula Vista
Yeah,
High School. It's literally like that. I was like, damn, they really into it. So
yeah. It's like wow.
Time to drain the fountain.
I saw that you are able to do a 620, a 630. My bad.
Oh, 6:30.
Yeah,
So what did you say? When was I first able to do it?
like how do you even begin to attempt to do a move like that?
So I owe this one all to Jordan Oliver. So I remember when I started getting the hang of things. Honestly, before I even started getting the hang of wrestling, because I wasn't too good at like my mechanics yet, even then. But I was finally not scared enough to get on the top rope, and I was doing like 450s and like moonsaults, crooked shooting stars, and. And then Jordan was just like, "Yo, you could do a 6:30," and I was just like, "What?" Like, no, I can't. And I'm not like a huge and like I was like Ricochet Ospreay, one of the best to ever like in terms of like just in that ring, like moves, going from move to move and spectacle, like one of the best to ever do it. But I wasn't even a huge Ricochet and Ospreay guys coming into wrestling, if that makes sense. Like I knew who they were and they were sick, but they were so like I was like I will never be able to do that. And then Jordan's like, "Yo, you can do a 6:30." I'm like, "I can't." And then he's like, just like actually just try it. And then like I try it, and I'm like, and then like the one time I try it, first time I ever try it, I landed it pretty much on my neck but sideways, and
Ooh,
everyone was like, "Oh my god," that was like pretty much it. And I was like, it wasn't a 6:30, but it was like the full rotation landed the wrong way, and then the very next try it was a 6:30. I'm getting goosebumps just even remembering, talking about that. Because that's honestly that's when the opinions of me change is that night. Yeah, is when people were like, okay, like you're probably gonna be something, you know, which sounds weird to say, but yeah,
you know, you
yeah,
you said that like you didn't think you could do what like Osprey and Ricochet could do before you
yeah.
actually ever got into a ring. What kind of what type of wrestler did you see yourself going towards? The
Like
high
I said,
flyer,
man,
the technician, the
dude,
brawler?
AJ Styles at most, and even AJ Styles is like literally like a half notch down in terms of high flying ability, but still just as great as wrestlers. But even AJ Styles, in terms of like, I thought maybe I could get a phenomenal forearm. I could definitely do a phenomenal forearm and yeah, that's probably about it. And like some like high flying moves like a frog splash, but like AJ Styles is one of my favorites for sure. Um, Chris Jericho was my first ever favorite wrestler. Going backstory, he's the first wrestler I remember seeing and being like, "That's my favorite." 'Cause I remember backstory before I wanted to be a wrestler, I wanted to be either a professional skateboarder or a rock star. And Chris Jericho was like, for my earliest memories, he's just like a rock star. Like, I didn't have to see any of his moves. It's just the way he moved and got to the ring and his theme song. I was enamored. And Jericho is my first ever favorite wrestler. And I'll always credit the two wrestlers that I knew I had to get in it because of. is Daniel Bryan and Seth Rollins, only
Hmm.
because Daniel Bryan, I heard him on Colt Cabana's podcast, and he said the reason he got into wrestling is because, mind you, he's another small guy. I think I'm probably taller than him. He's like, oh, I couldn't live with myself in 10 years knowing that I could have been on TV wrestling, being just as good as the people there now if I had just tried. And then that stuck with me because literally less than 10 years later, Daniel Bryan is on TV, and he's like, not only is he on TV, like the story is that he's one of the best at what he does. Now it has to translate at where he is now. Like that's like, you can't like write any of that. So I was like, oh, I have that in my mind. And then WrestleMania 31, when he cashed in, Seth Rollins cashed in his Money in the Bank on Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. I remember just being invested in Seth Rollins' his arc, like his rise, like his fucking rise through that time was so legendary, and just seeing the Shield, it was like the Shield. Everyone's talking about. Dean's got the mic skills. Roman's the guy with the looks and the charisma, but no one's really talking about like Seth. So I'm seeing the Shield break up. Boom. And I've heard Tyler Black, and I know he's probably one of the best in the world, but you don't see it under at least this lens because I'm a WWE fan at this point in time, just a WWE fan. Like I've seen Ring of Honor and all the other stuff, but to me, it doesn't matter what you do until you get there. And I'm seeing his rise, and I'm seeing how good of a heel he is, and there's no one, even at the time, there was no one really like him in terms of like, I think I'm gonna say his indiness to describe him, but he was such, you could tell that he wasn't like, oh, he's not a wrestler that trained there and got brought up through the system, even though there's nothing wrong with that, But at that time, that's just what we thought WWE was, And you had Daniel Bryan there and CM Punk, and those are the only two guys I could really think of that were like there. And I told you CM Punk was one of my favorites anyway at the time.
Oh yeah,
And
I love him.
seeing how Seth Rollins is compared to CM Punk at the time, especially too, he got the long hair and he's doing the savior thing, and I was all in, and yeah, seeing Seth
Now,
Rollins cash in, I was like, whoa, I literally got goosebumps. I think I know I've got goosebumps before watching wrestling, but like at that time, it has been such a long time of me feeling like I enjoyed wrestling because I'm like, they didn't screw this guy up. Like, he did it.
now,
Funny enough,
10 years
Fun
ago,
fact: me and James were at that show. We were
yeah,
at 31.
yes, we
But
was.
Word.
to me, it sounds like Seth Rollins is like your Michael Jordan when it comes to wrestling.
Yeah, in a way.
Which
In terms of like, yeah, in a way. Because like I saw him and my love for it grew exponentially more at the time. Because if I'm being honest now, like Seth Rollins, like, I think like I like AJ Styles a little bit more than other people. But like at that time, dude, there was Seth Rollins. That was the only person I was playing as in a video game, like 2K15. It's the only dude, Seth Rollins, or maybe Roman Reigns or John Cena.
now, 10 years ago, I actually had the pleasure of working with Daniel Bryan at a NYWC show out in Shirley, Long Island. It was his last match before he was going back to the WWE full time, and he teamed with another guy I trained and came up with, Tony Nese, and against the team of Papa Don and Alex Reynolds. So, yeah, I get that whole Daniel Bryan being so inspiring and Seth Rollins
Mm-hmm.
being so inspiring as well.
Yeah, because it's hard to really. I don't want to like put one up against the other because, like, honestly, even when Daniel Bryan beat like 2013 Daniel Bryan, that was my dude. Like, now that I'm thinking about it, that was my dude too. But I got sent away to a boarding school at that time, and within those 3 months, I did not see any wrestling at all. Like, and then I'm like coming back, and I'm like, wait, so Daniel Bryan's like finally, like, because he's good. Like, the story is literally he's one of the best in the world, but like he's just got to make it work in WWE. And then like I'm watching, my house parents are like, I'm like, oh, I know exactly who this is. You don't have to explain anything. And I'm like seeing Daniel Bryan, he's got like his shaggy hair going on, and he's like, and I'm like, oh, like he's about to be a big, like he's about to do it, and he did. Like,
Now, I actually watched one of your matches on YouTube. It was against Gabriel Sky. And
mm-hmm,
the one thing I noticed was that the ring squeaked a lot. Does
mm-hmm.
that, does that affect your concentration during a match to hear the squeakiness of the ring while you're trying to compete?
No, it's actually great because I can't hear, like, especially on Dojo Wars back then, like your peers that are also wrestlers, they'll be saying funny stuff, or you can just hear other things in the background, and it's kind of just nice to be in sync and know that, like, all right, I'm doing one thing right now. I've never really noticed it being like, like super like squeaky or of an issue, but yeah, you know.
And one of the things that we kind of touched on, but one of the main things about being a wrestler is the crowd.
Yeah.
Have you been in the pandemic so far? Have you been wrestling in front of a crowd, or has it been a close set?
Yeah, so the last few shows I've done, so the last show I did, it was actually a closed set. So it was only just wrestlers and staff of the event. So that's Mid Valley Wrestling, False Finish Productions. My buddy Dom DeNiro, he's starting, or he already has his promotion, and it's getting off the grounds, But that was no fans. That was in upstate New York. That was just staff wrestlers. And like there was a crowd, but it's us, It's not like an organic
Yeah.
it's not like an organic, like I'm paying to see my money for these guys, I think the last show I wrestled on that was in front of a crowd was Wrestle Cup. Sean Henderson.
When was
Mm-hmm.
that?
That was September 27th. I'm looking at the poster right now. Now that I'm talking about it, September 27th. And I wrestled Steve Sanders.
Does
Great wrestler.
does it affect you? How does that affect your mentality going into a match, knowing that there's no crowd?
It's a little weird, not gonna lie, because like I feel like right now we're seeing a lot of rawness in all sports that are deprived of a crowd. I think we're
Absolutely.
getting to see how truly good a lot of people are. And I know, like, without a crowd, I've been able to see my flaws a lot more. So I've been like, oof, It goes back to what I'm saying even earlier. I'm not wrestling as much. So I'm like, oh, I'm wrestling this week or I'm wrestling this month. So I'm looking at every little thing I did last time. I'm like, oh, like, that was a little this, or that was a little off,
Yeah.
And when you don't have a crowd, things that people would pop for, you're like, oh, that kind of sucks, Like just being honest, some of the stuff I do, I'm like, oh, that's not good unless like people are like, some of the stuff some people do, and I'm like, oh, So it's like getting me to at least think of a different perspective, at least, because if not, I would have just kept, like I said, if this pandemic didn't happen, of course I would have still went to training, and things would have happened in my matches that would have ultimately led to me to be more, I guess, to be more careful and more mindful of what I want to do, per se. But yeah, like now I'm just like, I'm like, oh, everything I do has to be crisp. And if it's not as crisp as I want it to be, then I'm mad, and I'm mad for like a month, kind of, because I'm like, oh, the next time wrestling is like a month or 2 weeks or whatever it's been. Not necessarily a month, because it's honestly been Wrestle Cup, Mid Valley Wrestling, and then Sean Henderson keeps bringing me back, and Mid Valley Wrestling keeps bringing me back. And that's like a 2 week thing, especially with COVID. It falls exactly 2 weeks, you know. So
Yeah. You just said you watch your matches back to see like what you did wrong and whatnot.
mm-hmm.
Is there somebody that maybe sits down with you as well to maybe point those things out, like an Arn Anderson or Tom Pritchard?
Oh yeah, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier. My biggest praisers, like the people that put me over the most, the rep, and the people that also tell me about myself the most, the rep. You know, Dave McCall and Nate Carter, because they see, they see what I don't. I mean, I see potential in myself, obviously, but I feel like when you are you, and you see yourself all the time, and you see your movements, and you don't really understand your aura as much as you would like to, like if that makes any sense, like the way that I'm perceived to people, I think it's one way. Like I was telling you earlier, like the Good Burger thing. I'm like, that's the last thing that I thought people were thinking about me. Like when
Right.
I started wrestling, I'm like, wow, like but they will sit down with me and they'll be like, why'd you do this, or why don't you do it like this, or why don't you try this, which honestly, if I'm not sitting with them and I'm hearing it from someone else that probably shouldn't be saying, like, not that they shouldn't be saying anything, because if you know, like, you should always, like, if you can help someone, you should always help someone. But sometimes I feel like, at least for me, I'm a little wary of taking other people's advice, because you hear so many contradicting things, right? So many people are going to tell you, don't listen to those people, because your match is going to be your matches, and when people see you, they're going to come to you for your, vision, which is partly correct, right? But what is my overall goal? It's not only be signed, because that's like a small portion. Like, it's not just to be signed, because like, I want to be one of the best to ever do it. Like how I'm talking about Daniel Bryan and Seth Rollins, like in terms of generational goats, because I'll put them up there in terms of like when they retire for their time, dude. People are going to be talking about them like, like, Michael Jordan, at least in my perspective, That's what I want to accomplish. But even if that doesn't necessarily mean getting to those heights like Daniel Bryan and Seth Rollins did, because those are both like WrestleMania main eventers, and they did it straight out of like, kind of back. I'm not from the backyards, but Seth Rollins from the backyards. I think Daniel Bryan he probably did a couple backyards, but it's just crazy because they're people I see myself in, and even as a kid, just like the Hardy Boys, I can't believe I did not say Jeff Hardy. Like what? Jeff Hardy and Shawn Michaels, Jeff Hardy. I met Jeff Hardy when I was like 13 years old, and Jeff Hardy was like my favorite wrestler from pretty much '07 until he left. If I'm being honest, him and HBK. Because in '05, I went through John Cena's my only favorite wrestler, right? And then you obviously start to realize, there are other great performers, not being a kid.
I'm sure your grandma didn't like that.
Yeah, did not, And then I'm playing with Shawn Michaels in video games all the time. Because for whatever reason, he always had that charisma, like I don't know. As a 6, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, if I wasn't playing as John Cena, I was playing Shawn Michaels, just like a guy that was like, oh, that guy's charismatic. That guy's cool. I had my Jerichos, like I said, when I was like really like first getting into wrestling. And Jeff Hardy, in like '07, when he came back in '06, but I wasn't really watching '06. because I wasn't like in control of my TV. Like, it was really just my parents watching TV. But '07, we had an extra TV, and I was just watching wrestling all the time, especially on the Spanish table or the Spanish cable, because I don't even think I had cable on this TV at this point, and if I did, it wasn't hooked up. But I was watching wrestling in Spanish, and I saw Jeff Hardy, and I recognized him from playing him in video games from before, but I thought he was Fred Durst, and so his Undertaker, and he had on the backwards hat, and he used to do like this cool dance, I thought that was Jeff Hardy, but no, it wasn't. And then '07, like I had seen Jeff Hardy before. I know Jeff Hardy. My older brothers, they're huge wrestling fans. They talk about Jeff Hardy all the time. But this is the first time I'm getting to live in the Jeff Hardy, like live in the moment, like as he's living in the moment. And I'm like, dude, this dude just really does swanton bombs, like off Hell in Cells and steel cages and like boom, and like, and he had the colorful hair and all the cool clothes and the dance moves and the theme song, bro. It's not like, like Jeff Hardy, bro. Like, that's all I gotta say. And I got to meet him when I was like 13 at like a TNA event. Cause my brother, his dad like managed at the Tower Theater. So he used to like stay in it and like live in it. But we got free tickets to go to TNA. And I remember my grandparents, they gave me like $20 to go eat. And by the time we went to go eat, it was the main event, right? So Jeff Hardy's music plays. So I'm like, well, I'm not, fuck this food. I'm not getting any food. Like, it's time to go see Jeff Hardy. So I go, and Jeff Hardy, I got to touch him during his entrance. Like, I ran up on him. He's probably like, who's this, like, this 12-year-old, like these kids just like running up on me, hoping he doesn't get like,
who the hell is this?
Yeah, But then I get to see a match. He wrestled Austin Aries and Bobby Roode.
Ooh, good match.
In the main event in a steel cage match. And then after, someone grabbed the mic and they were like, "The night's not over. Do you guys want to join the Hardy Party?" And of course, the Hardy Party. Everyone's like, "What? That's the Hardy Party? Like what?" And it's like, for $20 right now, you could go take a picture with Jeff Hardy. And I'm like, wait, I didn't even spend the $20 that like I had, like. And for me, like it's rare that we sat through like a 4-hour show. And I think this is for I was with my brother and my sister, so I think I was supposed to get them food too. And it's a rarity that we even sat through, but without getting food. But we sat through without getting food, and then voila, we have $20 and we meet Jeff Hardy. I got to hold the TNA World Championship, like the Enigma version. And
it was super lucky you didn't spend that $20 on a T-shirt or something.
Well, it's also like if his sisters and them snitched to that grandma, I feel like a whooping in the car was coming. But you were talking about like your like swagger. It sounds like you're attracted to people's like charisma, their swag, their ease, their style.
Yeah. Even
how would you
skateboard. Mm-hmm.
How would you present yourself in that way? How do you go trying to mold all these different influences and trying to make it like teeter it to yourself? Like, how do you try to make yourself stand out with your swagger? Because I see you get like a lot of feedback from Twitter and social media that people actually like your style. So how would you relate?
Yeah.
As in presenting your style?
So, like in the all together as just like, oh, I'm gonna just like try my hardest at wrestling, and put every time I have into wrestling. But once you get into wrestling, you realize that you need to take no matter what it is, like I don't care if it's basketball, or football, or skateboarding, or any of the stuff. You need to take some time off of your main focus and put time into other things, because you don't want to just live for one thing, And And I feel like that's what I was getting into. Like I said, I was like, I'm not going to skateboard anymore. But once I started coming along with wrestling, and people were like, yeah, you need to find your character, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't want to just be like, oh, I'm like Good Burger, blah, blah, blah. And I had the skateboarding thing, and that, besides like Good Burger and like Kelso or whatever I heard, like that's always what I heard about myself. Like even from school, people that didn't know me, they were like, oh, like, I don't know anything about you, but I know I always see skateboarding, and I know you're a skater, and I know you probably shred or whatever. So, um, I was like, dude, I gotta pick it back up and actually like skate like I want to. Because again, it came down to, do I want people to perceive me as this way? So I got in there and I heard, oh, like, dude, blah, blah, blah. And that's how people were like, and I'm like, oh, that's not what I want. Like, I want to be a wrestler. But then, as you said, you start to progress, and then people start to like you for who you are. And then you're like, this is what I should be doing. I should have never put down a skateboard at all, like, for those months. Because like I said, I had a long board. I didn't switch to a long, and that just so I can like cruise around. Like that's just like, oh, like you're just gonna be like not actually skateboarding. Like you'll be cruising and stuff, but you'll be safe. You won't hurt yourself. You'll be focused. And it was like, nah, I need to be like what people thought of me like when I was in school, just like, oh, like, well, because people now look back, people would like even like, they didn't say like the Good Burger stuff, but they would like definitely make fun of the way like I sounded to them, just like, oh, so yeah.
Do you have a question, Scooter?
All right.
So,
Take us through the first couple of bumps you learned how to do in your first training session. What is the routine? Because I would like to compare. With me, we would always start out with a left arm roll, a right arm roll, a back bump, a handstand bump, and a somersault bump. Take us through your initial training routine, if there is such a thing with DJ Hyde.
so I remember like, and this is all wrestling schools for the most part. They definitely just make you do a flat back bump, just like take a bump, like this is how you take it, But me just being like super like, anxious and like nervous, I like did like a, oh no, this isn't even, we're not even at bumps yet, dude. Still nervous and anxious, but DJ's like, yo, these are rolls, these are front rolls. These are like, in terms of like, if you were gonna ollie, like, it's like, these are your ollies, like, so I'm like trying to front roll, and I just do like a front bump, like I just front and I bump, but not like a good front bump, like at all, like not correctly. I like, he's like, no, like you're bumping, like you just need to roll, and I do a roll, but like it's not really roll, and it's another like front bump, and he makes you do a regular bump, boom, and then he makes you do a front bump, since I was kind of doing front bumps when I was rolling, and then, but I'm not really doing them right. He's like half impressed, but like he's not giving it to me at the same time. He's just like, well, at least you're not like scared, but he's like, it's definitely not like, it's definitely not right. But yeah, and that first training, dude, the only thing I remember is just walking out of there being like, wow, this is way harder than I thought this was gonna be. Like straight up, like, like, cause tryout, I like, I did it. I told my friends, I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm training to be a wrestler now, like it's official, Like the next day, I couldn't even walk down the stairs. Like I had to crawl down the stairs from that tryout. And then, like, I think go to training 2 days later, maybe the next week, probably next week. And I'm like, wow, like you have to like be kind of like smart to like actually do this. Like You know, like you can't just like want to do moves and like, you know, it's like there's a language and there's an art to this. It's not ballet and it's not circus acting or whatever they want to compare it to these days. It's its own thing. It's professional wrestling. It has its similarities, but at the end of the day, it has to have its rawness and its, I guess, cooperation.
Amen to that.
Mm-hmm.
Or else it's, you know, or else it's not. And I was like, that was the first thing I saw when I was like, oh man, I need to, and it was a long way.
So let me ask you now, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
So I don't know. That's so weird. Like, I want to say I see myself like signed, like, because I know, like, if I'm being honest, I know I can get signed within 5 years, right? But is that like just getting signed and just staying in the system, you know, or is that being like one of the best in the world, you know, like any of the people I was talking about, you know, and then them coming to you, being like, hey, we want to sign you. Like, we think your brand, like, we think everything you do, like, we think the Psychedelic Psychonaut, you skateboarding down the street, doing your kickflips, and, like, you sound the way you do, and the psychedelics and all, like, we want that. Like, if it's that, I see that as longer than 5 years, if I'm being honest. And that's just me judging by how long it took for the people I look up to get to where they are, you know? But I can definitely be signed in 5 years. But
When you say signed,
that's
what company are you referring to?
both AEW, WWE, TNA, like
Alright,
any, like, you
yeah.
know, like,
Well, the talent's definitely there, obviously.
yeah, you
Kalika, do you
know,
have a question?
Honestly, I think he's got the potential, man. I saw a couple of his matches. He really does stand out, and the swagger's there. It's just keep pushing and keep grinding, man. It sounds like
yeah,
you got your head on straight, and I already know it's always going to be a a struggle trying to deal with differentiate between associates and comrades and friends in the business, but I mean,
exactly,
it sounds like you kind of got that part, and it's just trying to navigate and figure out the people who can elevate and enhance you.
exactly. It's like you said, man. Like, I'm watching so many people do great things right now. You know, or actually, I think my phone's about to die. Give me a second. I'm gonna unplug my headphones and then get my.
So before we conclude this interview, we are wrestling with the Thunder Round. This is a shoot style question, so think it's kind of the first thing that comes to mind.
Mhm.
Are you ready, Christian?
Mhm.
Excluding your
I'm ready.
excluding yourself, greatest wrestler of all time.
AJ Styles.
Worst wrestler of all time.
God. Don't. This is just the first person that came to mind. I'm sure there's other words for Goldberg.
Good
He's
answer.
definitely not the worst of all time.
You're main eventing WrestleMania for the WWE World Championship. Who is your opponent?
John Cena.
Ooh, your grandma gonna be on your side there, boy. Yeah,
John
tell me,
Cena.
boy.
If you could come out to anyone's entrance music, past or present, who would it be?
Adam Cole. Or the Undisputed Era.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Finish the sentence. Kayfabe is.
Dead.
Ah, so the kayfabe is dead.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first thing.
Alright, fair enough. Squash. Fruit or vegetable?
Fruit. Oh, why did I say that?
Thank you.
No.
Thank you. That is the correct
It's a
answer.
damn vegetable. Yes, see?
It's the right answer unless you're Kaliko. New Japan
At least I
wrestler
got it.
New Japan wrestler Taichi's ring gear gets smaller every year, revealing more of himself to the world. My question, what is the appropriate trunks to butt cheek ratio for ring gear?
Honestly, I guess it's just for whatever is comfortable for you. I know I made the switch from just straight tidy whiteys that look like not they're not tidy whiteys, but they look like to bikers. Even when I got the feedback from like other people, and they're like, yeah, it's cool, but like you can't wear like shorts. I'm like, you know,
Cannot.
Then like to be fair, I always thought I'd be a biker's guy, like, but I didn't like. I just had a pair of I just had those like that pair of gear. Like, I didn't have to buy it or anything, so I was like, I'll just wrestle him in that. Jordan Oliver let me use his kick pads. I still have them to this day. And I was set,
Alright? And the last question. Have you
Can I wait? I just wanted to appreciate that he actually took that question seriously.
Yes.
Hell yeah, that's the real question of the night.
And lastly, have you ever struck up a conversation about Darby Allin in a supermarket?
No, I'm trying to think, but I might have though. I might have made a skate edit and said something about Darby and while I'm getting food, and you never know. I'm sure I've thought about Darby Allin skateboarding at some point in a store or talked about it, but I'm gonna have to say no off of straight up memory, but I'm sure it's happened.
Well, you did better than Scooter because he almost got kicked out of a supermarket for asking about Darby Allin.
Wow. What did you ask about?
It's the fact that he was attempting to go up to random people. See, here in New York, they're not exactly too keen on that.
Yeah.
It's the running
I
joke
mean,
of
I
the show.
had a dude thought yo, did he owe you money? He sounded like he was in on me, helping me whoop his ass. So
It's like, who's this Darby Allin dude? Why is he owing money?
And is there
Darby Allin does not owe me money. Just clearing that up for anyone.
and Christian, is there any matches you would like us to be aware of that we should definitely check out that maybe you're proud of?
yeah,
For
what's the
sure.
first match you would want people to see yourself in full glory?
Full glory. I'd say me versus Griffin McCoy. We had a killer. We had a pretty great match. Any of me versus Ellis Taylor. Me and Ellis Taylor just have great chemistry. Fun fact, Ellis Taylor was in my math class in high school, right? And he was my first ever pro wrestling match. So storybook right there.
But who had the better grades in math class is what we want to know.
Oh, yeah. So he's young, dumb, and broke.
Yeah.
I honestly think he might have been a little better at math. I'm not too good at math, but in terms of science and other stuff, who knows?
That's actually really funny because when I first started going to NYWC shows before I actually started training, there was somebody there who was a valet, and for some reason I had this deep familiarity that I knew her from somewhere, and I couldn't remember. And then she comes up to me after the show and calls me by my first name. And I'm like, what? And turns out we went to high school together, and she knew my first girlfriend.
And see, it's funny because like you're like, who are you? And she's like, this is but like we went to high school, and it's like,
Yep.
oh, but like you meet plenty of people that remember you at some point, right? Even with like I just had this so I'm trying to get a skate park here in Ardmore. We are the whole Ardmore like conglomerate of skaters, and it's really the main line, but the main dude who is the driving force of it, he lives on my street and he has a mini ramp in his backyard. And his name's Patricio. And at his party, we had a birthday party for his daughter, and she's having people over to skate, and we're like, hey, we need a place to skate. Like we need an actual like skate park. Like we need like a not like a place that's not for the public and a place we won't get kicked out for. And as we talked about this, the person next to me, I didn't realize this, but they knew me. And they were like, wait, you're that same kid that used to skateboard up and down the street from Holland to whatever, blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, like, it's me. And then of course talk to them, I know who they are now. I'm like, oh, of course I remember you guys. But it's just weird because they're like, oh, you're the wrestler they were talking about, because they heard of the wrestling skateboarder, but they didn't know it was me, obviously. That could be anyone. And then, but when they remember, they're like, oh, like that's you. And like, it's just funny. Small worlds. Like, you never know who knows you. Even when you guys hit me up to these podcasts, right? The first thing I saw was like, oh, I'm gonna look at the page, and it was like, well, I obviously don't know this person, right? This person knows me somehow, and it's just crazy that you never realize the effect you have on people until some stuff happens. But, yeah.
Absolutely. And before we conclude this interview, uh, once again, could you tell us what is coming up for Kristian Robinson?
hmm Yeah. So November 1st, I'll be wrestling Jimmy Lloyd for Sean Henderson's Once Upon a Time. I'm trying to find the address at H2O Wrestling Center,
Williamstown, New
1041
Jersey.
Glassboro Road. We'll link you guys to it. But
And
that's this Sunday. That's gonna be a barn burner. And then I don't know if I can say the next match right now because it's technically secret. But all I know is you guys are gonna love this one. Like, you guys are gonna love this one. So stay tuned.
but I'm going to definitely ask you after we're done with this interview. And where can they find you on social media?
Again, on Instagram, it's Trippin' Balls, Trippin_ balls with 3 L's. Twitter, Christ610. It's just my name, but like with an H spelled in half. KHRIST. My actual name doesn't have an H in it, in case you're wondering. And that's it, yeah.
Alright, and from everybody here from Wrestling with Entertainment, we wish you nothing but the best in your career.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thank you.
And we hope that maybe when you become a WWE World Champion one day, you would like to join us back on the show.
You already know. And like I said, I clicked on your account and I saw, and I was like, it doesn't matter who it is. Like, if I can help, like, I'll help. And you guys are helping me, which I appreciate. So anytime. I don't care if I end up being The Rock, which I probably won't. But you guys can have me back anytime.
Oh, that's
Never say never.
Exactly. And
once we can go back outside, I might challenge you to that SmackDown match. It might be my ass, but I ain't gonna be no bitch about it.
To say I'll let you create someone on here. The Here Comes the Pain. That's another thing on here. People say these creation modes are limited on here. They're just not good creators. Because they've got everything. At least mostly everything for its time.
Well, we deeply appreciate that, Christian. And for Kaliko, actually, if you like what we're doing, please like, subscribe, comment, both on YouTube and Castbox. And you can find me on Twitter as well at JamesJ993. Where can they find Kaliko Yachts?
I am Kaliko. Actually, you know what? Today is about 5 years, man. 5 years since I proposed my wife in the middle of a wrestling ring. So,
Oh,
shout out to my wife.
congratulations. And where can they find Scooter Dust?
Congrats.
Well, you can find me always at Scooter Dust and representing the UNB network at UNBS Wrestling.
For my co-hosts, Kaliko Yachts, Mitch Mayhem, Scooter Dust, and our very special guest, Kristian Robinson, I am James.
Psychedelic Psychonaut. Be sure to, stay tripping, guys.
This has been Wrestling with Entertainment.